The recruit train keeps on rolling. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A little housekeeping. My YouTube support has been amazing. I'd love to have all my subscribers download the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. It's equally as important for helping the channel and Locked On UConn audience grow. So give me two quick favors. First, click that button at the bottom of your screen. Then head over to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button. This way, you'll never miss a moment of Locked On UConn. I can't tell you how much your support means to me. It's everything. If you're tuning in from your car, once you finish the show, please drop us a 5-star review. Good reviews trigger referrals for similar shows where we can find some new audience members who are interested in more UConn content. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down and now they're over, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking you up and all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So we talked about the recruit train, or the recruits are flocking to UConn. Let's just go over, as I look on Rivals, On3, some other recruiting sites, to kind of get a list of folks that have been brought to our attention at UConn. And kind of we talked a little bit to Adam Zagoria about some folks that are definitely interested in UConn as a school that they're going to. And then we're going to talk later in this program about with Mike Richman of the Blazers. He covers them. We're going to talk about Donovan Clingan and his role in Portland. But before we do that, Malik Thomas is the first name. I feel like, to me, I've heard some fantastic things internally that we're feeling really comfortable that he will be the next big UConn recruit. Also, Darius Akoff Jr., some other folks that have been linked to UConn. Obviously, AJ DeBonsa. Some other folks as we scroll down. Darius Adams, who they're very high on, another 5-star recruit out of Indiana. Let's check out him. He's been on the rise. Took an unofficial visit. Spoke to Adam Zagoria about him and his future cast, at least from Rivals and On3, is Rutgers. Could see that because it seems like lately they've been getting that point guard. Ace Bailey is one that is this kid's more of a shooting guard, so more of a combo. He fits what UConn wants, a bigger guard, 6'3", 6'4", needs to put on some weight, but senior in high school. This is for next year's program, obviously. So I could see him getting some love from UConn and flipping that from a Rutgers future cast to a potential Husky offer. I was talking to DJ White, who's a friend of mine on Twitter here. He reposts all my stuff. Shout out to you, DJ. I think he mentioned that he thinks that they're going to recruit 4 guys, which is entirely possible. I think the magic number right now is 3 and maybe 4 becomes a possibility because of potential transfers next year. After this season, whether we win a 3rd title in a row or not, you could see some defections just based off of playing time, especially from the 4 that stayed. Which of the 3, whether it's, I feel like Jalen is a lock to start to get a bunch of minutes, Solo obviously as well. But which of the 2 between maybe Solo and Jaden gets less run, and maybe they're more subject to the transfer portal. So 3 to 4 potential recruits coming in. Also, a player that I think they are very high on is that 7-footer, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Braylon Mullins is a name we've talked about as a potential UConn fit. We had Tobias Bass talking about how he is literally a Husky, 6'5", good shooter, sniper, total team guy. I'm trying to find the name of the 7-footer that they've really are all over. Let's get the positions. Pardon me. I rarely do this, but Eric Ryby. He's from Maryland, 7 foot, 230 pounds. His stock is rising. He's a 4-star, likely a 5-star once it's all said and done. But even if he isn't a 5-star, I could care less. And I know the UConn, coaching staff doesn't care whether they're getting 3, 4, or 5 stars. It's what they think that they can bring to the table. So he's gotten 33 offers, as most 7-footers in the country who are skilled do. The future cast right now is West Virginia. Interesting. He's from Potomac, Maryland. I'm not sure what maybe there's a link there with the coaching staff. But Connecticut has popped up, and I've talked to a few folks that are on the inside who believe that he is definitely on their radar as the next potential 7-footer at UConn to come in and be that rim protector. Has a little bit of an offensive game that needs to be refined. But again, ton of offers, some names that we should know. Creighton, Butler also in the mix. Clemson from the ACC, Boston College from the ACC. But yeah, definitely feel like we're in a good position to get 3 or 4 of these guys. Another guy, Caden Lewis, I believe, took an unofficial visit. Looked real good in that UConn jersey. I feel like everyone wears that number 1 jersey. But I think he would be fantastic at Connecticut, just because. And I think the trick is, and this is what's so tempting to talk about all these kids, is you'd love to see as many talented players as UConn could find. But the trick is not to get, all right, Malik Thomas plus, Darius Adams plus, I don't even hate to invoke their name, but I don't want us to become Duke. I want us to become UConn elite, right? Which is kind of UConn, what UConn has been in the past, plus where they could potentially go in the future. And if that means getting 3 or 4 5-stars, but it's all part of the plan where, they know that some guys are leaving, they know guys are going pro. Liam McNeely maybe is a one and done. Guys are moving on, and you got to replenish. Why not get the best possible talent, right? So for me, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, Caden Lewis is right here. He's a 4-star at DC. Right now they have the future cast as a toss-up. He's visiting Kentucky. He had an unofficial visit at North Carolina. So he's got an offer from my friends over at Cincinnati. Kansas as well. Is Kansas really a blue blood? I don't know. We'll talk about it. I just like to tweak them with their fun titles from the 20s. But yeah, no, I think, again, there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to UConn in regards to the recruiting of some phenomenal players that are from the wing spot, the guard spot. Really haven't got any 3s or 4s, mostly just centers and shooting guards and point guards. So I feel like they feel like they're set with that also kind of shows me that no matter what happens, I think Yusef Singari is staying, because if you think about it, if it's Samson has a great year, he goes pro, Terrace Reed steps in, and then you have Yusef, and it's split time between then. Potentially get a kid like Ryby, I don't know how you say his name, 7-footer out of Potomac, Maryland, to come in and be that kind of third center or third power forward-ish player. So maybe that's good news from that perspective. So I'm reading into it from that angle as well. So we're going to talk about that in future shows. And going forward, we're going to talk about our guy, Donovan Clingan, and him making his dreams come true with the Portland Trailblazers, coming up after this. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have now ended, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sporting bets partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On UConn. We wanted to bring in, as you know, Donovan Clingan, drafted with the 7th pick in the draft recently last Wednesday, making his dreams come true. The Bristol kid is in the Pacific Northwest. Wanted to bring in a fellow Locked On podcast network family member, Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. We're going to bring him into the show and talk all things Donovan Clingan right now. Mike, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk all things DC.
Absolutely, man. So obvious question. Draft night comes. He starts to drop a little bit. I was on your show profiling whether we could talk about Donovan Clingan, Stefan Castle, Alex Caravan, these guys. When he started to drop, did you think it was going to happen where they were going to grab him at 7, or was there a team that you thought may snag him before he got to the Blazers?
Yeah, so Clingan was like the name people were chasing in the draft, which is kind of funny because he was like clearly like he's at his ceiling is probably 3, although there was some rumors that Atlanta might be interested in 1, but it was like his ceiling is 3, but he was sort of the most coveted prospect in a weird way. So the first, watching the draft, it's like Houston is up at 3. It's like, well, if Houston makes this pick, this is a big deal. Like this means that it's probably going to happen. And then Houston goes with Reed Shepard. 4, it didn't seem like all the reporting didn't suggest that San Antonio was going to be there. Detroit, it was unlikely. They have a stable of young centers. And then you get to 6. And 6, they've got a new coach. They've got this is in Charlotte, a new coach, new GM. It's like they could do anything, right? And I like Mark Williams, prospect from Duke, but like he's not. I don't think he profiles as a Clingan. Maybe I'll change my tune in the fall, and I'll be like, just kidding. Donovan Clingan could pray to be Mark Williams, but like for me right now, I think Clingan has a much more intriguing ceiling. And the reporting starts to come out that the Blazers are like trying to move up, and also Memphis is trying to move up. So there was this, 5-minute period, 6-minute period. I guess the reporting is a little bit ahead, maybe 8 full minutes of like, it's not going to happen. But as soon as Charlotte made their pick at Tijon Salam, it was a done deal. The Blazers were rumored to be all in on Clingan, and when he fell in their lap, there was no hesitation, and they made the selection.
Well, when you show this to your Locked On Blazers family, you can say that all of us at UConn in UConn Nation are ecstatic that he did not get drafted by the Hornets, because they have a history of drafting our players and turning them into terrible or very underutilized players. So
hey, Kemba is a low-key Hornets legend. It didn't work out great, but a Hornets legend. Shout out to Emeka Okafor. Maybe that didn't work out.
Emeka Okafor.
Who's the big white guy? Big white center on one of the early championship teams. Jake somebody. Jake Voskuhl. Yeah, he's a Charlotte legend as well. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, there was one that said Mark Safe. There was a meme going around UConn Twitter. It said Mark Safe from the Charlotte Hornets. So we're excited because listen, the Blazers have a lot more tradition. I'm not going to lie to you. Plus, as UConn fans have all kinds of NBA fandom, and some of it is not local. So you're going to see a lot of UConn fans rocking Rip City jerseys with Donovan Clingan's number 23 on it. So what do you think of the number selection? Is that just the inverted 32? Obviously you can't have it because of the legendary Bill Walton. You think that was a cool choice, or do you think maybe you should have went with a different number?
I am always wary of young guys wearing 23. I am always wary of it. When he came into the league, Yusuf Nurkic picked 23 coming to the U.S. when he first played for the Denver Nuggets, and it was like such a telling thing. Like he was like such a smack talker as a youngster. But then like Fred VanVleet wore 23 when he was undrafted and coming into camp with the Toronto Raptors. He kind of bet on himself. He's like, y'all didn't draft me. I'm freaking Michael Jordan. So I think it kind of depends on the personality. You get a better read for it. The Blazers have had other guys wear 23, like Alan Crabb. I like the number. It's fun. But it's a big number. It's like a number,
Yeah.
He wears 23. Interesting. But it makes sense, right? He's a 32. He's won a lot of basketball games. He hasn't done a lot of losing wearing that number, so I can understand why he wanted to stick with the digits.
For sure. This was a report that came out after the draft nationwide, and I'm curious your thoughts about it. What does it tell you that Donovan was willing to come back for a third year to go for a three-peat, and Dan Hurley was like, man, get the hell out of here. You need to go to the draft. And he was like, okay. What does that tell you about this kid? Just about his personality, that he was so enamored with the college game that even though we know he's draft ready, that he's definitely an NBA player, that he was like, I'll spend one more year at UConn. What does that tell you about him as a person?
Well, he did have a lot of positive reinforcement during his time in Stores. They kept winning national championships. So
Yeah.
he's like, oh yeah, I'll do it again. Yeah, why not? This is super fun. The college experience is great. Like you go to a little bit of class, and then sometime in early April, you get a trophy. I'll keep doing this. But it speaks to someone who says like, and also like NIL has kind of changed the appeal of college and all those things. And my man Dan Hurley is already positioning himself to get more cash for the needy people of UConn.
That's right.
Shout out to the Lakers. And I think it speaks like Clingan is a dude who wants to win. I'll say in his introductory press conference with the Blazers, he said all of the right things. He's incredible. And he was introduced on Saturday, and it's like, when he talks, you're like, yeah, dude, I'm with you. He's the guy who says the right things, and he seems sincere when he says them. So it speaks to his just interest in playing basketball the right way, doing the right things that help teams win. And in UConn, they kept winning, so he kept wanting to go back.
No, without a doubt. Well, when we return, we're going to talk about DC's role in Portland and get Mike's perspective on what they're going to do with that roster. Some interesting questions coming up after this. We're back at Locked On UConn with Mike Richman of Locked On Blazers. So let's get into what his role is. With DC in the fold, what does Portland do with DeAndre Ayton? I know that he's a former number one pick himself. Do they play together? I read that Joe Cronin, the Blazers GM, made a call to DeAndre on draft night, and that was framed positively, right? But you're a journalist. Let's be skeptical about it. What are your thoughts about that situation?
He had to call him, right? Joe Cronin, the Blazers GM, had to call the Blazers incumbent starting center DeAndre Ayton, because you can't make this pick at 7 and then be like, oh, what? Huh? What are you talking about? This is just a normal basketball thing. Yeah, no problem. Yep. So he had to call him. And as the way Cronin frames it, like you said, is pretty positive. But I think there are some obvious questions when this draft pick happened. And I mentioned on draft night over on my show, and I actually have Tuesday, July 2nd over in the Locked On Blazers feed. I got 35 minutes for you on how Clingan fits. So we're going to talk about it for 9 minutes here, but I got a fat one for your listeners over on the Locked On Blazers feed, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. DeAndre Ayton has this season and next season remaining on his contract. He's 25 years old, going on 26. He was kind of terrible to begin last season, and then found it at the end of last year and was like way better in the final 2 months of the season, even good. Some would say good in the final 2 months of the season. But he's 2 years left. And when you make this pick with Clingan, it does kind of feel like maybe the clock is ticking on DeAndre Ayton's future with the Blazers, because like you don't draft Clingan to be a backup for his rookie season, right? Maybe you do for year one, but not for his rookie contract, for his 4-year rookie deal. So, Joe Cronin called him and said, you're cool, we're cool. So I think, this is all going to work out. I think the night one role for Donovan Clingan is that he's a backup center in the NBA, which I think is very reasonable. He's played 13 minutes a game as a freshman and played 23 minutes a game as a sophomore. The leap from 23 minutes in college to like 32 as an NBA starter is probably an unreasonable ask. So night one, day one, year one, he's an 18 to 22 minute a night backup in the NBA. I think he can be really, really productive in that role. And then when he proves that he's ready for it, I think the Blazers have a fairly easy onboarding route for him together. Before we get into them playing together, do you think you could play two centers in the NBA? What is your read on playing Donovan Clingan and DeAndre Ayton together?
You know what? It depends on who else you have on the wings, right? And as playing point guard, I think you could do a twin tower aspect, because I think what people are going to be surprised about in Blazer land, if you will, is that Donovan's a pretty capable shooter, and will be able to step out and stretch.
Sell me on this, because he shot 58% as a sophomore at the free throw line, a career high 58. He took 9 threes in college, 9 of them.
Yep.
I've actually watched them all now. I've seen all 9 of his threes on video. But this is a thing that permeates. Tell me why Donovan Clingan is going to become a shooter.
Because he can. Like, I think I think he wasn't asked to at UConn. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, this is one of the things I just had a conversation with our Locked On Spurs family about Steph Castle. Very similar respect, where Dan Hurley recruits and says, we know that you can do all of the things, but you're coming here to do this thing. You're coming here to be a rim protector and a shot blocker and, maybe a scorer when we need you. Like, a great example is in the Illinois game when they had nobody that could cover him. He had 22 points, 11 rebounds, et cetera, et cetera. If they needed him to be a 3-point shooter, let's say Alex Caravan got hurt, or they just needed him to develop into that, they would have asked him to do that. But they just knew that they didn't need it. And this kid has great form. He's a hard worker. I don't think it's not like you're going to have to remake him. Like, I think there's some players, DeAndre Jordan comes to mind, where they had to kind of like remake. He's now a 75% 3-point shooter or a free throw shooter because they made him shoot left-handed, and he kind of recreated something.
Right.
You're not going to have to do that with Donovan. He's, 19, 20 years old. The form is there, and he can step out and shoot it because we've seen it in practice. We've seen it. I know that the Blazers have seen it in a workout.
The Blazers keep saying it. I'm saying I am the skeptic. You're saying you've seen him up close, and the Blazers keep saying it. They were very emphatic in his introductory press conference that they think he can be a shooter. And when he showed up for his private workout, he did a 1-on-none workout in Portland. That wasn't. It was reported, but not like previously disclosed by the team. And Chauncey Billups said that he watched him shoot 3-pointers in that practice, and he said, that's an easy looking jumper. Like, that looks easy and clean. That doesn't look forced. And he brought him into his office and he said, hey man, why didn't you shoot threes in college? Like, what the hell? And Donovan said, because I wasn't asked to. I wasn't asked to. That wasn't the job. And like I said, he kept winning basketball games. So what he did do is he was a hub and a passer and all of those things, and a lockdown defender, and he checked the boxes he needed to check, and they freaking won 1 million basketball games. Mark's never even covered a loss in his time.
That's right. Honestly, Mike, do you know who his comp truly is? And this guy's a shorter player, but he plays a similar position in the NBA. Is Domantas Sabonis, because the kid is a fantastic passer. He has that ability to kind of see over a defense right off the bat. He makes the right plays, and once he starts to kind of get that flow of, okay, so I'm a scorer now in the NBA. These pick and pop situations where maybe he's stretching out to deep twos. I know that's not like very in vogue in the NBA these days, but 3-pointers as well. I don't think that's going to be an issue for him at all. I think that's going to be part of his, daily routine.
Yeah, I think if I worry a little bit, even if he's like I think he could become a shooter, but in terms of like the early pairing with Ayton, DeAndre Ayton's taken 93s in 6 seasons, 358 games. He's taken 93 pointers. He's not going to start shooting threes. So it's going to be like, it's going to be DC if anybody does it. It's going to be Clingan. And he's just like, the idea that he's just not, I don't think he's going to play a big enough minute role where he can get the volume from 3 to matter in his rookie season. But he could develop into that down the line. I think the pairing is going to be pretty awkward in year 1, but if Clingan develops, I think it could be something that works. But I am pretty skeptical of it's just, for me, I guess with prospects, my like logic on this is keep it narrow, like do what you do best. Donovan Clingan is going to make a huge jump in quality of competition, with all due respect to the Big East. I know the Big East had a bunch of dudes drafted. I think it was the most in 29 years, the most draft picks from the Big East. Congratulations. The NBA is a different beast, right? And so I'd rather Clingan be used. That's why I view him as a backup right away. Is like, do what you do best. You're gigantic, protect the rim, and be a passer on offense. And then from there, once your strengths are strong, then worry about your other things. So I think like year 1 is about making sure the things you're really good at, and then go from there, which might make pairing him with a traditional center a little bit awkward, which is why the GM had to call that traditional center and say, cool, man. Everything's cool.
Mike, what's an everyday situation that you could see that's the same as Joe calling up DeAndre and like giving them a heads up? Like, what would be the real world equivalent of that?
So in my day job, I work in real estate, and we have to travel all around the state of Oregon to do inspections of properties. And we just hired someone in Central Oregon, like 5 hours away from where I live. And my big boss called me and was like, "Hey, we're bringing this guy on. He starts July 1st. He starts today. I haven't met him yet, but we'll get on a Zoom call soon." And he's like, "I don't want you to feel threatened." And I was like, I don't want to drive 5 hours for work. Like, this is great. I'm loving this dude. And I feel like this is the same thing where it's like Klingan's like, or DA's like, so I get the same job. I don't have any more asks. No, I get the same amount of money and my role doesn't expand. Tight. I'll see you on Monday. I'll be there. And obviously there's some concerns down the line, but it's like, someone taking over maybe a portion of your job that you didn't, that you weren't going to do anyways. And so you're like, great.
No, that's I like that. That you were on the ready with that. I love that.
You hit me at the right time. This is a really good time in my professional life for it. So yeah,
perfect. One last question, and this is more just kind of like more off the court because he's a Bristol kid. I don't know if Connecticut and Portland, Oregon are going to be similar, especially not Bristol, Connecticut, or Stores for that matter. So he's only lived in a very small pocket of the country. How do you think DC will mesh with the vibe in the Pacific Northwest? He's a pretty chill kid, but he's pretty intense on the court. Like, there's a dichotomy there. What's the vibe in Portland? I've never been personally. So just give me your thoughts on how he'll kind of ingratiate himself into the community.
I think he will be pretty heavily beloved early on. Like, he seems like the kind of guy, no nonsense, hard worker, says the right things, understands what his role is. He's not like, even if he has an ego, and I think you do need an ego to survive in the NBA, he's not someone who's playing, the ego is not fueling him, right? Like, it's like the sort of like pride in his craft is fueling him. I think Blazer fans will love him because he does the right things and he's going to be physical, play hard, play defense, kind of a thing that they've really needed. Culturally, it's always hard to know. Like, will he enjoy the beautiful outdoors and recreational marijuana? Hopefully maybe in his downtime, but, but like,
right.
It's, not on game days, DC. No. But like, and does he enjoy like a really, really bitter IPA? I don't know. But like, how big of a bike enthusiast is he? But I think in terms of, just like being enjoyed by the community, like in Portland, we have one of the major team sports, with all due respect to MLS. It is a city that has basically one major pro league again, apologies to my soccer fans that are listening, but like, this is the thing to do. And we have terrible weather during basketball season. It is the salve from what is difficult out there. If Donovan Clingan brings it and provides you peace from November to March, he will be immediately beloved.
Well, I can tell you right now that is a perfect fit, because as much as we don't have pro sports in Connecticut, and all due respect to the WNBA, Connecticut's the show. And, the University of Connecticut is the show. So if Portland is the show in Oregon, outside of maybe the Oregon Ducks in football, that's a prime, connection there, because there's not much going on in Connecticut from a sports perspective. And those cold Connecticut winters definitely get the basketball team gets people through it. So I love that. That's something I didn't think about. So I really appreciate that perspective. Mike, do you want to give us where we can find you before we let you be on your way?
I have a social media presence, but it's not particularly active. So the place to find me is over on Locked On Blazers. Mark knows the grind. It's 250 shows a year, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Like I said, if you are looking for more Clingan stuff, if you're a UConn listener, publishing Tuesday, July 2nd on the YouTube feed and also on your audio feeds is a deep dive, 35 minutes on how I see Clingan fitting, even deeper into how he fits with DA. A whole bunch more and some stats to back it up on what we talked about here. So I think your listeners will be interested in it. Go look for it on wherever you're listening to this. Just search for Locked On Blazers.
Awesome, Mike. Have a wonderful day, man. And we'll catch you on the flip side. We'll definitely want to check in with you as the season goes on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. That was Mike Richman, Locked On Blazers. Really appreciate him jumping on the show and giving us some perspective on our 7th pick in the draft, our favorite son here of Bristol, Connecticut. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And before we go, I wanted to let you guys know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now available on Amazon Fire and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with our local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Again, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Stay locked in. Make sure that toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.